Hey everyone, welcome to the Mean Green Gridiron Podcast 2024 edition, episode 5. I'm joined once again by Carter, with minus the pretty face today, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
too
Matt.
embarrassed to show my face after this weekend. I'm out of town right now, so I have a mobile setup and no camera. So
Yeah,
apology.
you're not the only one.
I don't think of how many subs are we up to.
I think we're up to 16ish.
Okay, I'm gonna gamble that at least 13 of those people do not watch the video to see my face. So sorry, maybe next week.
No, I'm in that crowd. I like to listen while I'm doing work, anyways. But yeah, no, not fun. I know this was just a demoralizing loss. It was. I don't know if this is like a North Texas specific thing or like a G5 kind of thing, or if all fan bases experience this to a degree. But every so often we get these losses that are so bad that they make everyone question like the existence of our football program to begin with. Like what are we capped as a program? Are we just doomed and destined for failure? And I got to say, if you were one of those people dooming and glooming all weekend, like a lot of Mean Green fans I saw were on Go Mean Green, I got to say, I would say it's pretty natural. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think it's natural. I think it's logical in a way, but eventually you got to move forward off of it. And it's like I said, it's normal, and they're fair questions to ask. And so I know we've gotten a little bit of a reputation of being like maybe overly positive, maybe too positive, and I'm fine with that label. But what I will say is we will talk. We will have the hard conversations today. We will have the not as fun topics to go over. And so anyone feeling like frustration towards the team, we will go over a little bit over that. We won't dwell on it too much, but. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? It was a 35-point second quarter where it was just going to go down in history as just one of the worst quarters of football we ever see at North Texas, and just about any FBS game.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want to talk about anything about the game specifically, or just kind of your thoughts afterwards or during?
Well, I think you could safely call me. I edge on eternal optimism. I try not to be too positive, but my kind of initial reaction was obviously just like sad. Obviously, I wish we had played better, but as the day went on, I kind of did some thinking about it and was just kind of like, okay, well, at least I'm used to it. For like you mentioned, like, is this just kind of who UNT is, and it is who we've been forever? I am willing to gamble, at least in the context of the rest of this season, that Saturday's loss was an anomaly. I don't think there's going to be a game they play even close to that poorly. Again, I don't think we're going to play that poorly against Tulane or Memphis. But when you talk about just like the basic things that you need to compete in a football game, like momentum, game prep, body language. I mean, all the just the little like tiny intangibles that make up like swagger when you're on the field. We had nothing. We had the one touchdown by Wyatt Young that was fun, and every other play on the field, we just looked inferior. We were getting beat in the trenches. Like I said, that was something that we could not do. We were getting out physical. We were getting out tactical, and we, you see on Twitter this week that Texas Tech's defensive coordinator is just literally talking about how easy it was to score on us. He's like, yeah, I saw Memphis do this one play, that one outside run like 3 times, and this is where we positioned our blockers, and it worked. It worked for us. Like, it was just easy. And when you are in year 2 of a staff, getting your play calling just like completely like put on blast like that, that's a problem. I am not going to hefty overreact to this game. I will eat the L that I said we I think I picked us to win by like 13 points. So I'll eat that L. That's an embarrassment for me.
Yeah, we both get it. I think Brett Vito calls it the embarrassing Homer Award. We'll both wear that one.
Well, he picked us to win too, and
did he?
yeah, in his weekly little tweet where he said,
that's right, the kiss of death, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
sorry, Brett.
You pre-show you mentioned there's just not too much time we want to devote to this game. It was a complete beatdown, like you mentioned. It was the second quarter really where things just got so out of hand, and it was just a complete, it was like an avalanche of, there was that one stretch where it was like Texas Tech touchdown, pick six, pick touchdown in 4 plays, and you're just like, God, that is just unacceptable. And it doesn't matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter if we're facing Ohio State. You cannot allow a momentum swing like that. And yeah, I do believe momentum's a real thing in football. Maybe not a tangible thing, but it is true that if going into the end of the first quarter, even though our defense was, getting beat pretty easily, it still felt kind of good. We had that good White Young touchdown. And even though our offense was kind of a little bit stumbling through the water, it was like 17-7. Okay, this is kind of what we expected, some points. And then all of a sudden, with 6 minutes left in the first half, it's 45-7. And you're just like, what happened? It's like you get punched and you're just kind of laying on the ground, confused. You have no idea what happened. So yeah, I didn't like the energy. I didn't like the schemes. I didn't like the play calling. I didn't like anything I saw. And what sucks for me the most is that I totally would have accepted a competitive loss here. Sure. If we had lost this game along a 42-27 margin and just looked competitive and just shown signs of some of the things that we were a little concerned about after the SFA game, the sluggish start on offense. Same thing happened this week. Chandler Morris's, interception problem got worse this week. The rushing defense,
at least 2 were maybe
2 were not his fault. I know, but even still, it's something you want, especially in a game like this. They happen when the game was already over, and you would like to see some composure when the score is 38-45-7. And God, our wide receivers did nothing to help him out this week. I'm sorry, I don't want to call anybody out, but the wide receivers just looked asleep at the wheel, and I don't think did him any favors. The rush defense, again, well, like I said, Taj was going to kill us. That was just a given, but just sucks that we had such a good run defense the first couple of weeks, and then Taj Brooks plays and does what he was expected to do, which goes for 100 yards and a touchdown. So overall, I'm just kind of bummed, but I don't think it is a indicative score of where we're at as a team. I think that the Wyoming game will be a bounce back, and we'll talk about them in a second. Tulane and Memphis, although I did say last week, and I still do believe that those are both teams better than Texas Tech. Obviously, this has no real effect on our score, but it was just a weird weekend of football, both in college and the pro ranks. First of all, we were not the worst Group of 5 loss Saturday. Kent State did lose 71-0 to Tennessee, so we were not the most embarrassing Group of 5 loss. UTSA got blown the hell out by Texas, which was at least a little bit of a satisfying nightcap for us. And then, it was just a weird weekend in the NFL. You had, Tua going down with his concussion problem, and the Cowboys getting blown out by probably a mid-Saints team. It was just a weird weekend. It was an odd weekend of football. So I'm going to choose to keep the positive mindset and meditate on this loss and go forward with a hopeful optimism that we can rebound against Wyoming. So that's about all I have to say on this Tech game. Baron Morton shut my ass up, and I can own it. So yeah.
And one last thing I'll say about the Tech game. Offensively, it was tough. The receiver play, I got to give them an F for that one. You could probably give a few position groups an F, but the receiver group in particular, I mean, even the first drive of the game, you had a chance you get the ball first and maybe go down and put some points on the board. And Damon Ward, Chandler Morris makes a great rollout to his left, gets some space from the defender, puts one on the money to Ward, and he just drops it. A second week in a row where he just atrocious drop.
Yep.
but yeah, the offense not playing great. That was concerning. I know they've had the injuries, but that's got to look better. And just kind of moving on from Tech specifically, I think I want to talk more overall about the defense. And so I've seen a lot of people calling for Capone to be gone, and
Yeah.
I think we've both been patient with him, and I think that the concerns are very real. They're very legitimate, and it's up to him at this point. I mean, he hasn't been dealt the best hand with some of the luck with basically all of our defensive back transfers that we brought in, either getting injured or being suspended. And at the end of the day, this is the guys he's got to work with, and he has to be able to show that the defense can be more competitive than this. And I've heard people say, well, the 3-3-5 makes sense because it's easier to recruit 5 defensive backs that are good than it is to recruit 4 defensive linemen who are good at the G5 level, because the P4 schools love to scoop those guys up. And I got to tell you, I get the logic, but what's really hard to find, if it's hard to find 4 good defensive linemen, it's really hard to find 3 defensive linemen who are good enough to withstand 5 offensive linemen, by themselves. That's a tough task for the defensive linemen. That it's you make life harder on them by only having 3 guys down. And whereas if it's 4, maybe it's harder to find a good 4th defensive lineman, but at least there's 4. At least there's a lot more kind of one-on-one block situations. I mean, as a center in high school, I loved 3-man fronts over 4-man fronts. I would take those any day of the week, personally. But I think again the concerns are real about the defense. I think they looked better the first 2 weeks. I think this is a better defense than last year. I still feel confident that's the case.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing that Eric Morris brought up positive about this game is that we did have some tackles for loss. We had some negative plays, and I think that we squandered those opportunities. One in particular, we had a Zaylen Scott, I think, sacked Baron Morton. It was 2nd and 21 in their side of the field, and we immediately give up the first down. Like those kind of plays, those should lead to better results. And I think against most teams on our schedule, they probably will. So I think that, again, I think the defense is better this year, but it's super concerning. And one thing also I will say is that I think a lot of people kind of want a 4-3. And if you look across the conference, across most teams across the country, 4-3 is out. I mean, it just teams don't run it anymore. Right. I think if you're expecting that the next defensive coordinator we bring in is going to run a 4-3, I think you're going to be let down. I think what's more likely is you're going to get a 3-3-5 that is more similar to what Phil Bennett ran, which is where you have 3 down linemen and then you have 1 linebacker who's kind of an edge rusher. So you have 4 defenders on the line of scrimmage, and then you have 2 second-level linebackers and 5 defensive backs. I think that's more of the look that you're likely to get, whereas this look obviously is a 3-3-5 stack where you've got 3 D linemen, 3 second-level linebackers, and 5 DBs. So just putting that out there, that I think if you're listening to this, set your expectations accordingly, because the next defense we run here is not going to be John Skladany's 4-3 that we ran in 2013. It's just not. So don't get your hopes up. Don't be disappointed when the next guy comes out and has a 3-3-5, and don't just moan off, just based on hearing those. Although I get most North Texas fans are done with that look. So anyways, again, I think that the negative plays going forward, if you can continue to do that, I think you're going to be in good shape, at least for most of the teams left on our schedule, outside of Memphis and Tulane. But what are your thoughts, I guess, about Capone? Like, what's kind of your breaking point at the end of the season where you say, okay, that's enough? What are your thoughts about the scheme in general, and if you think it can work at least against the G5 schools?
Yeah, that's the key point right there. Is you're talking about, like, I'm not saying this to talk down on a team that just skunked us by 48 points. whatever it was. I don't even remember. It was like 46,
I,
maybe 45. Only 45. There we go. I joked in the group chat that we kept it under 70. So
and we had it we had it in the red zone when we ran out of time
right.
again.
Hell yeah. I don't I'm not trying to disparage Texas Tech right after they kick our ass. That's not a great Big 12 team roster wise. It just isn't. I'm sorry. That team's probably still winning 5-6 games at best. I don't see them competing with, even teams like Colorado who maybe are a little bit more top heavy. I still think we'll be able to exploit some of their defensive weaknesses.
I'm interested to see how they do because I think they do have some talent, but it'll be interesting to see how they put it, if they can keep it, putting it together. If that's just kind of a
I mean, hey, if they finish with like 8 or 9 wins and have a really good season, at least it makes this loss look somewhat salvageable, I suppose. But we'll come back to it in December.
Yeah.
But as far as that's concerned, I mean, again, that's why I commented. I really just wanted to see a semi-competitive game because I think it is completely fair to expect, on the subject of Capone, like that our defense can at least stay somewhat in this game. Like in year 2, when you're talking about guys like Rod Young after week 1, where he was just talking about like this is a system that they've had to really buy into over a long course of time. And they didn't see immediate results last year, right? Like they were a terrible defense last year, but first 2 games this season, you really stopped the run. The pass breakups are better. They're not perfect, but they're better. Guys are turning their heads a little bit faster. Still getting beat a little bit on some bad, burned routes, but it's fine. That happens when you're in year 2 with, a defense that was as bad as it was last year. But there were signs of improvement, right? And one thing I noted after the SFA game was that the guys were just playing a little bit faster, a little bit more physical. And
For sure.
I totally agree with you. Like they seem more attentive, and it is absolutely going to be a better defense this year, especially down the stretch. I think towards November, December, we're really going to see some signs of cleaning up some of our errors on the defensive side. But having said all that, like I just commented, I still think Tulane and Memphis are better teams than Texas Tech. Memphis for sure. Tulane's had a little bit of a rough start, but they still have the talent to
Tough teams, tough opponents.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they played Oklahoma and who else did they lose to?
Kansas State.
Kansas State. And both those games were competitive. So, I don't know, man. I mean, I think that this is just one of those weird games where I kind of need to say is play Wyoming and see how they bounce back. I don't think that the final score on Saturday was indicative of how good or bad either team on the field was. You eliminate the second quarter and it's a competitive football game. So obviously that's not how simple it works. There were backups in, and obviously that's not how you play the game, obviously, but still means just a little bit that, the first quarter was at least a little bit close. And you clean up a couple things, like you said, just capitalize on some of those big tackles for losses. Don't throw picks on back-to-back plays. Just like just prevent some really bad stuff from happening, and the game will go better. It's pretty black and white. So I don't know. I'm trying to compartmentalize this game into one bad showing of our worst parts. And you can look at like the 2017 team where they went to FAU, and same thing. The game almost was identical, where they just came out
did feel like that.
Yeah, came out flat. Defense, you just knew they were going to score every time they had the ball. Got ran over, got passed on. I mean, just the defense looked inferior. And then they rattled off 5 straight wins or 4 straight wins or whatever it was in November, and looked like a really damn good football team that month in November in 2017. Like a totally different team against some good opponents too. And that Army game was one of the best games I've ever been to. And that was a tough physical Army team that our defense, we gave up 45 whatever points it was, but still it was just like a amazing physical battle, just like guys hitting the shit out of each other. So I think it's inspiring to see stretches like that, and I definitely think we're capable of that. But I think as far as Capone's job security goes, I don't think we have enough reason to move on today. Having said that, he is the highest paid G5 coordinator of anybody, which is ludicrous given the results he's put out. You could get me going. I'm not trying to spend too much more time on this game. You could get me going for an hour talking about like what I think North Texas should be and my expectations for them as a program, and whether some people think those real expectations are realistic or remotely attainable is another conversation. But my expectation is that like we're a good enough football program, or should be anyways, with our resources, location, money, all that sort of stuff, that we should have a better on the field production than we've had in this game, in big games in the past, obviously like with Luttrell, and just like these are games that I want us to be competitive in. And in year two, Cal last year, like I said last week, excusable. It's week one, new players, new roster. This year, I guess it's 77 new faces, and the defense is still bad, but they're not the worst in the country. I think we're at as far as we can push it with this thing. I mean, if he comes out and skunks it up against Memphis or Tulane, and one of those games is absolutely not competitive, then I think that is a decision that can be made then.
Yeah.
But as far as right now, Wednesday night at 11:30, I just want to see us play Wyoming. I want to see us play a bad G5 team, see how playing those guys over there. No disrespect to them. I'm not talking shit after we just lost by 40, but Wyoming's 0-3. So just see how we rebound against them and recircle back next week, because I think it's a lot better to analyze the first 4 weeks of the season, which if Saturday goes well and we win the game along the lines of like 35-10 or something like that, then you can have a conversation like, okay, well, 3 of the first 4 weeks went really good. Yeah, the one game you really wanted to win didn't go well at all, but we can have that conversation then. So I'm going to wait till the Wyoming game is over to make any serious comments about Matt Capone. But I do agree. I think that 3 guys up front is definitely what you want, especially as we were trying to, up our size too, on the defensive line and kind of get a little bit tougher in the trenches. I know that's something specifically Eric Morris wants. But yeah, 5 guys in the secondary is clearly not working out here. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think, it hasn't yielded great results. And what I will say is that I'm not a big fan of the firing like mid-season, especially if we're winning some of these games that we should win. Beat Wyoming, beat Tulsa, maybe beat FAU somehow. That game seems winnable.
The thing is, Texas Tech was far from the most important game on the schedule.
Yeah,
far from it. Like, obviously, would we have liked to have won it? Yes, but in terms of importance and like we need to be better against teams like UTSA and teams like Memphis and Tulane. And so if we can play those teams better than Tech and use this as a stepping stool for those games, that's a win in itself. So,
yeah. And look, if we do win those games, whether we win or lose them, I think that we need to have, Eric Morris needs to have the conversation about Matt Capone at the end of the year. He can't, if somehow we're able to pull off an 8-4 season or a 7-5 season, I think he still has to have that hard conversation of if he wants to keep Capone or not. Because look, you could go 7-5, 8-4 against this schedule and still not be where you want defensively after 2 seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, and especially, look, we fired Seth Luttrell because he kind of couldn't take us to that next step as a program. From 2018 through 2022, Seth Luttrell was his teams were 0-14 against FBS non-conference opponents. We were 0 for our last 14 under Luttrell. That has improved, at least against the non-P5 opponents. But to that point of like trying to get to that next level, our last 2 P5 opponents or P4 have just made us look like we don't belong on the same field because of what they're doing to our defense. You go back to the Cal game. The Cal game, I was willing to let that slide and just chalk it up as the first game. but the fact that this happened against Tech, I think that does mean something, and I think that should hold some weight when you evaluate and say, hey, we cannot have this happen again. We've got Tech again on the schedule in a few years. I don't know if Capone's still going to be there by then, but regardless, I think we've got some big opponents on our schedules going forward. But even then, the bigger question is like, can we make it to the next level, whatever that is, as a program with this defense and beating East Carolina, beating Temple, beating, Tulsa and Wyoming, winning those games, that to me doesn't mean that you keep Capone for sure. So I think, again, that's my thought is going forward, you make sure that you evaluate Capone kind of independently of the team's just record. You can't just keep guys, because we've seen that before. We've seen guys be kept just because the team's winning, and maybe they're not the reason that they're winning. They're kind of winning in spite of them. And that can have long-term, negative ramifications. So I think if you're Eric Morris, look, this is your job. I mean, this is your program. And if you're tying yourself to somebody like a defensive coordinator, as an offensive guy, as a guy who's saying, here are the keys to the defense, I'm going to handle the offense and the program, and I want you to run a tight ship defensively. You're tying yourself to that guy, and he has to be better, and he has to answer for that. At the end of the day, one of the things that really pissed me off about Seth Luttrell is that there were times where he would be asked questions during press conferences about defense, and he would say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm not a defensive guy." You have to ask the defense coaches about that.
Yeah,
like, dude, you are the head coach. I mean, you cannot. That's
you are the defensive coordinator's boss.
Exactly. Yeah. And Eric Morris, he can't have that same mentality. I don't know if he's aware that Seth Luttrell was talking like that. But I know one thing that concerned me with Luttrell is that he said that he hired his defensive coordinator. When Seth Luttrell first took the job, he said he hired the defensive coordinator because it was Troy Reffitt at the time. And he said, I figured that if I hire, and Mike Eckler, he said, if I hire defensive coordinators who, were hard to coach against, then, that's my measure of, if they're going to be good here. Eric Morris said the same exact thing with Capone. It's the same exact philosophy of just saying, I'm going to hire a coach who was hard to coach against. Well, were they hard to coach against because they had other good coaches? Were they hard to coach against because they had good recruiters? Like, there's a lot of other variables at play. So I think it's kind of a short-sighted statement. So that was, again, we're kind of seeing that play out similarly, where that may not be the best logic in picking your defense coordinator. But again, point is, look, Eric Morris, this is your responsibility, whether you're a defensive guy or not, and you got to show that you're capable of understanding that and owning up to that. But hopefully he does, and hopefully Capone turns it around. We'll see. Again, we've seen better things from the defense, but it's time to put it together. Now you've got an opponent in Wyoming who is struggling offensively. I mean, they look bad. In this, if there's any week to show that you have some guys defensively and that you can put together a game plan, it's this week. I mean, their quarterback Evan Svoboda, he's completing 43% of his passes. He's averaging 4.4 yards per pass, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. He's been sacked 8 times. I mean, they have just been completely inept throwing the football. Even running the ball, their running backs averaging 2.9 yards a carry. They're going to try and establish the run, but you have to, again, generate negative plays, get into 3rd and longs, get into favorable down and distances where your defense can get some turnovers, keep the stone cold Steve Austin celebration going, maybe get a little bit more, more of a timely opportunity to pull that off and get the crowd behind you on it this time. But again, I think this Wyoming team they are the perfect chance to show that, hey, this defense is not as bad as it looked. And if the defense is still struggling against these guys and they're scoring touchdowns on Saturday, then that's concerning. I will say, sometimes I'm of the opinion that an ugly win is fine. Sometimes I'm of the opinion that an ugly win is a sign of a team that's not, maybe not cut out to win a ton of games the rest of the year. This
Yeah.
is a game that I really want to see a double-digit win. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not a game that I want to come out and see an ugly win.
Yeah, no, I absolutely fully agree. This is a 0-3 team that doesn't do anything particularly exciting on either side of the ball. And you want to talk about the schedule as a whole. You got Wyoming and then Tulsa, who also is not off to the hottest start. Their defense is scoreable on.
For sure.
So you got not just one but two games where you can really make a statement, and they're both home games too. So like you're not in Lubbock, you're not in the big scary Big 12 country anymore. The vibes were off Saturday, regardless of the score. Just the vibes were not there. But you got a Wyoming team with a first year head coach. Like, just this is a bad team that is still figuring some stuff out. And again, I don't want to be I'm never going to disrespect the opponent because I have seen the UNT at the lowest of the lows. Okay, I'm never going to talk shit about a team that probably deserves less respect than I give them. But you know what? Wyoming is Wyoming, and this year is not their year so far. So it's supposed to be a sellout, which is fun. Looks like it's going to be a good crowd. I heard today that the wing is sold out. So, this is a game, like you said, this is not just a game where you want to come out and win. I don't think you can really afford another SFA type, like kind of slow, sluggish one. Like you need to really make a statement on Saturday. You need to come out, score on the first drive. You need to limit turnovers. You need to make some, defensive stops, really like create turnovers, get them off the field on third down. I think third down, we were like 7-14 or something on Saturday. Can't be 50% on third down. That's bad. So I'm not talking about unequivocal domination. This is not a game I expect to win, 77-0, but I fully agree. You're talking about a 4-game slate of Memphis, Tulane, UTSA, and Army. That's tough. And given what we saw on Saturday, I mean, like I said, momentum is not a tangible, actual thing, but there is such a thing as carrying positive energy and confidence. And I don't know why we didn't really have any of that Saturday, but I'm willing to move past it and just, like I just said, I mean, it's easier to kind of judge this team after the Wyoming and Tulsa games, which, again, respectfully, are just both games we should win on paper in terms of the talent we have and some of the guys who have been here for a while. Like those are both teams we should beat at home. So I think I'd much rather analyze a 4-1 team getting into the meat of their schedule than make any like hard predictions about, one bad loss. So, I think Wyoming is just a not that interesting team. Their first year head coach is just off to a rough start, and I don't know, they've gotten blown out twice by two Power 5 teams or Power 3 or whatever you call it now. They lost to an FCS team in Idaho at home. So you better hope that this is a team that you can just walk all over. Again, not intending any disrespect. If you can't tell, I like giving out respect on this show because I already had to eat a 12-point prediction win prediction against Tech, so I gotta kind of count my not stack my cards too high. I can't get too wild and crazy over here, but I don't know. I'm just hoping for a good win on Saturday and just hope the vibes come back. Even the weird SFA game, the vibes were still good. And it just felt like, even losing Jawan Price and Chandler throwing a couple picks that game, it was just a little weird, but, still overall the energy was good. And I think a lot of us were pretty optimistic heading into Lubbock. It's the complete 180 this week where I think everybody's just kind of like, please score touchdowns again. And where's the defense we saw the first 2 weeks? So,
we want to see. We desperately need like a win that that we feel good about after, not just like
Yeah.
we won, but so what?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I've
And,
won, but at
and
what
even if you give
cost?
up points, man, like I felt good after the South Alabama win. Like I felt great. Like
Yeah.
you can give up 28 to Wyoming. I don't care, but just score 58, you know? Like I I pick your poison, but I just want to see just a couple things in this game kind of return to form from a couple weeks ago, where it's like you showed us you're capable of doing this. South Alabama's a good team, by the way. Like they've played well since we beat them, and so I don't know how good, but they beat an FCS team by 80 points. They play App State this weekend, which I think will be a good test for them.
Tomorrow.
They played Ohio close. I don't know how good Ohio is at 1-1.
Well,
But
they didn't have their quarterback that game. They didn't have Gio Lopez that game.
okay, well
I
then
think
even
I
still,
watched some of that game. I think they would have won that game if they had
yeah,
Lopez.
yeah, they're a decent Sun Belt team, and we beat them on the road. Like we're capable of playing good football. Just like I don't think we're 40 points worse than a mid of the Big 12 team.
Yeah,
but like let's see Saturday. So
yeah, and something you talked about the vibes and just the atmosphere, but I think something that as a North Texas fan is very frustrating, and it's been a constant, one step back, one step forward, or one step forward, one step back. It is just building an environment at a game where, look, the truth is a lot of the tickets that are quote unquote sold are because of family weekend, and that's okay. You take people in the stands any way you can get
right,
them.
that's right.
And what you really need to do when you get those people at the games is you have to play well, because people who it's their first time at the game, they're going to be they're a lot more impressionable.
There's another home game next week. Like
Yes.
there's a
Yeah.
game next week that they might come back to, and it's
Right.
it's a good game against a good American. Well, not I will say good American team, but a good program. Like
Yeah,
Tulsa's at least a
an
respectable
equal,
name brand. Yeah,
a team on our level, a team that's recognizable
yeah,
brand. But yeah, for sure. And look, Adam, Mean Green Nation was saying this. I can't remember where he said it, but he said something along the lines of like this Tech crowd showed a good example of, look, this is what a team and what a fan base looks like, that is passionate about their team and cares about their team no matter what. It's not conditional in the same way where our fan base, it's so conditional. Well, show up if we have a good team that year, or it cannot be so conditional. You have to be able to build that environment because the players feed off it. I think anybody who's been in a big stadium like that, as like an opponent or as an away fan, I think anybody who's listening to this who was at the Texas Tech game this weekend in Lubbock, you feel that just sinking feeling whenever you are the opposing team and their giant crowd is going crazy because they just ran back a pick six.
Yep.
Like that feeling when you're at that game of just seeing that environment, it feels like you get this feeling inside, like you're kind of scared, you're kind of like just like you get shell shocked a little bit, and I think a lot of our freshmen kind of experienced that. Let's be the other end of that. Let's like have it almost feels like embarrassing in a way. I think anybody who's like been in that stadium, I think they can, or been in that situation as an opposing fan, can kind of attest to that. But like that weird feeling of just sinking embarrassment, like
right.
it's hard to really explain, but like it if you felt it, and you have a chance to do that. You have a chance to create that environment and be an impact on the game, and we need to have that culture.
And you look at look at the bowl games we've been to. I mean, the 2014 Heart of Dallas Bowl, that was a massive crowd of Mean Green fans at the Cotton Bowl. I was at the it was the New Orleans Bowl, I guess is the name of the bowl, when we played Troy.
It was in New Orleans.
I can't remember the bowl. I think it was just the New Orleans Bowl, but whatever. That bowl game against Troy, that was a big crowd. I was in a big crowd of UNT fans there.
Mhm.
2016 against Army. I mean, like, if you win and show that you can like kind of put yourself in competitive football spots, I think that it's a double-edged sword kind of like that, where it's like, yeah, we need to build that fan base and build the expectation of, like, even if you lose, man, this is your team. We're not, and I know that UNT's probably never going to be on that level of like, even like Baylor or TCU or SMU, where they've got, well, I don't want to say SMU because they do not have fans in their seats every
Yeah.
week. And I'm not saying that because I don't like them. It is a
Yeah, it's
fundamental
just
truth that they have a very soft fan base in terms of attendance. But I like to liken us to Baylor and TCU a lot, where it's like those are schools where I get that they're private, but you know we have more alumni that are alive than they do. We have
right.
more students than they do. Like, it is possible to build a brand like those two schools have. I'm not saying that we should realistically expect it. I'm saying it's possible. And
Right.
like you mentioned, we hired Eric Morris with the expectation of like, okay, Seth Luttrell got us here. I'm not on camera, but I got my hand yay high. And now we want to go here, and it's yay high, and it's a little bit higher. Like, we want to kind of be in bowl competition every year and really have a chance at winning a couple of them. It needs to not be a pretty much essential given that we're going to lose any serious game with stakes, which is what we dealt with under Luttrell. That's why he got fired. If Luttrell had won 2 bowl games, or just maybe 2 more games of importance, that a big UTSA game at the back end of his career here, or 1 more SMU game, I mean, he might still be here. So it really just goes to show, like you said, it's very much a culture thing where you have to win enough that people, when they come out for family weekends or for homecoming or whatever it might be, when you get those big crowds, just win. People didn't care that we beat Stephen F. Austin. People were having a good time 2 weeks ago. Like, the Maniacs were awesome. They're going to be awesome again this weekend. And I do want to give I don't know if we've actually shouted them out yet. I want to give a like heartfelt thank you to the Maniacs for putting the work in that they have this year to get student attendance up and kind of create that buzz around the football team. They've done an excellent job, and I hope that they are getting their props that they deserve. But yeah, I mean, like, again, this is just a game, like you mentioned, that you can expect to win by multiple scores. You can expect to have some big highlight plays and some plays where like our guys, maybe block a punt or get a big hit sack, like those exciting football plays. Like, these are guys that you can out athlete because Wyoming stinks. So, yeah, I just, these are 2 big games, Wyoming and Tulsa, for us, where I agree, kind of same thing. It is obvious, but I do want to see a showing of like, hey, we got our shit together. We got our asses kicked. We learned our lesson. This is who we think we can be. And like I said, after those 2 games, I'll be able to a little bit more fairly assess where we're at as a team in year 2, and how we can move forward with Capone and how we can move forward with certain schemes and lineups and stuff like that. So yeah, and I am a little bit of a hypocrite too, because I am not going to be able to make it Saturday, but I hope everyone that does cheers loud, and I know that we've got a good group of small dedicated fans that continue to show up every week and support, but just need to win. Just win the home games. Win the home games.
Yeah, I know. Something that I do feel for the people who made that trip to Lubbock, because that just sucks. I mean, to drive 10 hours in
guys up
in
at 4 a.m. driving.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that's look. I get it, man. You have every right to be pissed off and feel like like you were let down by your team when you tried to show up for them. But at the same time, like, we need to be able to build that environment as a program, and we need to be able to build that. The fans should be able to get into it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a DFW thing, but I do notice, like, even the Rangers, when they were in the playoffs, it felt like the fan base was very at the Rangers games this last playoff run. It felt like the fans' engagement in those games was very conditional. It was like, if we were doing great, then yeah, there was a raucous,
Yeah.
roar, but there were times where it was kind of like, even in the World Series, where
Yep.
it just felt dead in there. Like, hey, you were supposed to be loud and supposed to, like, try and be the impetus to make some of these plays happen, instead of being so reactionary to these, oh, it's something good has to happen before I cheer. I think the fan base, our fan base, obviously, similar area of people. I think we need to have, again, that we cannot be so reactionary. We cannot wait for something good to happen before we cheer. You have to be able to be loud throughout the game, and obviously not when your team's on offense. That's another thing. We
Yeah.
have trouble with
Well,
knowing when to be loud.
Chandler having to tell everyone to be quiet against SFA.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Mason Fine do that to now we're still doing with Chandler Morris, it's a little bit tough to stomach, but still, yeah, the point is, like, be loud especially when you're on defense. Like, build an environment that is not dependent on the team doing well first. Because look, let's be honest, if we wait on North Texas athletics to be like that impetus to make us cheer, then, like, it's going to be fewer and farther in between. But if you can be the crowd that makes some noise, makes it difficult, makes the opponent mess up their snap count, things like that, that has a tangible effect on the game, and then you get to cheer more. The team gets behind it. So that's my message to the fans is look, be an unconditional supporter, be a supporter of UNT athletics in the way that helps them get there, not in the way that waits for them to get there before you start start being all in. But if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you probably are already.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Okay, take it from me. I have family members who, like, my family is, I've mentioned it on Twitter a lot, obviously, and I've mentioned on this pod before. Most of my family went to Baylor, and I have my brother goes to Ole Miss. I have family that went to Arizona, so it's fun for me to, like, kind of dip into other teams. But still, like, if you went to UNT, man, like, this is your team, like.
Sure.
I have passionate opinions about supporting colleges you did not attend, but that's a conversation for another day.
I do too. So yeah, we'll get into that at some point. But again, I think we're talking to the wrong crowd, because I think if the people listening here are the people who don't need that scolding.
You never know, man. A new face pops up on gmg.com, sees the post. You never know.
That's true. All right. One thing I wanted to talk about is, so I briefly mentioned the receiving core. So we're banged up. We are down to our 4th and 5th string running backs. We've got, obviously, Juwan Price out for the year. Ikaika Ragsdale. Morris said the other day that he's going to be out at least through the bye. So he's not going to play this game or next game against Tulsa. And Demaje Harris doesn't sound great there either. Him not being listed on the depth chart seems to indicate that he's going to be out for a little while too. Yep. So now you're down to Zach Evans, transfer from Minnesota, and Shane Porter, walk-on from Kansas State. Zach Evans, I thought he looked like he had some bursts. He didn't always have the best holes to run through, but I'm interested to see him in a bigger role. But regardless, I think we're going to lean heavy on the passing game. And passing game, we've got some injuries especially at outside receiver. Damon Ward's injured. Jeremiah Aaron's injured. It sounds like those guys might play, they might not this week. But outside of those two guys, you're down to pretty much freshmen on the outside. Kyle Cook, Barron Tipton, Mason Ferguson, and then Blair Conwright, who did not have a good game. He dropped what would have been a touchdown, and he dropped another contested pass that would have extended a drive. He hasn't been great this year. But the point is, we're down some guys, and this is a huge chance for Chandler Morris to step up and be like what we talked about the first game going against South Alabama, where he's the best player on the field, and he looked like it. And it didn't matter what the situation was. He was coming up with the plays. He was coming with the plays that we needed. And sometimes when you're down guys, that's where quarterbacks kind of find a new target or find somebody who they can lean on And I don't care who it is. DT Sheffield's been pretty quiet since that last touchdown he scored. I think his third touchdown against SFA, I think he hasn't recorded a catch since then. Landon Sides came up with a goose egg, I think. Wyatt Young had the one catch for 75 yards. Great play, but also his only catch of the game. Like I said, Blair Conwright didn't play great. Oscar Hammond didn't do much. One guy who showed out was Miles Coleman, true freshman. He looked super fast. I want to see more of him. But regardless, you've got question marks across the board. Obviously, you've got some offensive line injuries. This is a game for Chandler Morris against, again, we talk about Wyoming not being great. I think defensively they at least pose some challenges. I think they're a much better defensive team than they are an offensive team so far this year. So look, you've got somewhat of a challenging defense. You've got some guys nicked up. This is the game for Chandler Morris to step up. I think I really want to see that. You had 6 interceptions the last 2 weeks. They weren't all your fault. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they were all your fault or none of them were your fault.
Can't have 3 in 3 straight weeks.
Yeah.
Cannot.
You have to turn it around this week. This has to be a good, clean week where we're moving the ball down the field, we're protecting it, and you're making the plays on third down. You're making those money plays. So that's my guy is just Chandler Morris, most obvious player on the team, but this is the kind of situation where you need him to step up. Sometimes you see even like in the NFL where teams will have to pay their quarterback, $50 million a year, and then that squeezes. Then they have to let like their top receiver go, like kind of like the Chiefs with Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, or you see it, with obviously like the Cowboys when they started to pay Dak, then they think they traded Amari Cooper, or you get the point. You see it in the NFL, Tom Brady, where quarterbacks they have to lean on less known commodities at receiver, but the best ones find a way. They find a guy who's reliable, who catches the ball, and they target that guy. That's what I want to see out of Chandler Morris this week. Figure out who is that guy going to be. If the Damon Ward's out, obviously it was him in week 1. It was DT Sheffield in week 2. Regardless of how many people are down, find 1 or 2 reliable targets and feed them. Get them.
That's
the ball.
what I was going to say. It's a leadership thing, man. Like
for sure.
You are the leader of this team. Like step up. I'm not trying to pick on you. Like most of your tenure here has been mostly enjoyable, but like this is a game where you need to step up and really take leadership. Like you got guys down, find a guy.
Yeah, for sure. I like to think that he's going to get some good NIL money, and he's going to stay here this year and next year. But let's hopefully he earns it. Hopefully he throws for 5 touchdowns and he sticks up a giant board with a QR code in the fourth quarter, and everybody pays him some good chunk of change, and he goes. We all leave Saturday night very happy with a W.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean this is the chance to make the money metaphorically and maybe literally. But let's see it. Wyoming again, defensively or offensively, we have to be able to keep them in check. I'll go ahead and give my score prediction. I've got Mean Green 35, Wyoming Cowboys 20. I think that we're going to make enough plays defensively and make enough plays offensively where this game is not out of hand, but we can keep it at a at a comfortable lead where we're able to run the plays we want to offensively, and we're keeping them in check. One thing I will say is I fully expect, maybe not to start the game, but I do expect that we are going to see Wyoming's backup quarterback this week. His name's Caden Anderson. He's from South Lake Carroll. Look, he was the guy who took over for Quinn Ewers after he left. But again, I think Svoboda has been terrible. I don't know if he's going to start. I would assume he's still going to start, but they're definitely in that situation where it might be time to go to the backup. And as many people know, North Texas has had issues with that in the past, where it's like a team goes to their backup and that dude just lights us up.
Hang on real quick?
Yeah.
Am I just shooting in the dark. Is he related to Drew Svoboda, our tight ends coach?
I don't think so. I think he's from somewhere else. He's from Arizona, so I don't think so. I think it's just
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. That would have been a fun little quirky game, though.
We'll just go ahead and say it is. This podcast promotes misinformation.
It's his son, and we're gonna use it as fuel in the fire.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just curious.
No. Yeah, that's my prediction. 35-20. I think they go to their backup quarterback in the second half, and we're able to still keep them at bay.
I can do one of two things here. I can soften it up a little from last week, play it safe, or I can double down. And I can't do all that talking about fans, touting their chest, being proud of their team, and then go soft when it comes to a score prediction. I think we win this game 49-17. I think that we finally figure some stuff out. I think the offense gets its rhythm back, a rhythm they have not had in 2 weeks. I, again, don't want to put any ill will towards the Wyoming Cowboys name, but they are a early tenured team with their head coach. They're young. That just feels like an opponent that we should do this against. And I'm going to play optimist here. I think the home environment helps. I definitely think that there is a sense of embarrassment, like you talked about with the team. Just, you got your asses handed to you on Saturday. You have a chance to do the opposite. You get to be the big boys this week. Like, let's see what you do. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Tulsa, I think Tulsa will probably be a little bit closer. I think we're going to win that game too, but I think it'll be a little bit closer of a score. But this is a game that we should be able to win, hopefully by 20-25-ish at the very least. Maybe run away with a couple late scores. My big thing is I want to see a defensive touchdown this week. That would make me so happy. I don't you can give up 20-25 points if it means a defensive touchdown. I'm all in. I want to see a pick six or a punt return or a punt block for a touchdown or something. So yeah, I'm gonna say 49-17. Probably gonna be deadly wrong about that for the second week in a row. I don't remember what my picks were the first 2 weeks, so I'll have to go back and listen. But I know they weren't as bad as Tech, so
doesn't matter. We picked them to win, and they did. So
that's all that matters. Hey,
that's all that matters, man. Yeah,
that's all that matters.
Yeah, and to your point, like the pick six, I want to see some big plays where like we've got a lot of guys on the roster who have shown ability that they can make big plays, but they're not making them consistently enough. Let's see more of that. Let's see DT Sheffield, come back and make some big plays this week. Landon Sides was quiet last week. And then, defensively, like with Rich Sahada or Evan Jackson, it doesn't matter. Like, let's get some sacks, some interceptions. Like, let's see the big plays, the plays that, go up on the stat sheet and, make a guy, an all conference kind of consideration. Like, let's see more of those big plays, because there wasn't a lot last week. There wasn't a ton against SFA either. But yeah, let's see who are the playmakers on this roster. Who are the guys who are going to be the playmakers consistently going forward? Here's your chance. You've got a big home crowd. You've got a beatable opponent. Let's go see it. Let's see what these guys train for. Year round. Make it happen. All right. Thanks for listening. We will. We'll be back next week, hopefully recapping a win against Wyoming. But till then, go Mean Green.
Fix the vibes and go Mean Green.